For the Detroit Lions and their faithful fans, perhaps the biggest piece of news for them this offseason has already been given to them. But the biggest question is, why did it happen? We're going to talk about it in today's episode, folks, so stay tuned. We used to be a team no one respected. We used to be a team no one feared. That was then. This is now.
First victory of the year on the line. Goff's got it. Back, looks, throws, end zone. Yes! Caught!
You know who we are.
10-5, end zone, touchdown Detroit Lions!
And you know where to find us. We won't be far. We'll be on your front porch waiting for you. We are the New Era Lions. And
we are driven by Detroit.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving in. But before we dive on in, again, I just want to say to all my loyal fans and subscribers that are coming on back, again, thank you so much for coming back. Thank you for devoting more time to the show. It means the world to me that I have such loyal fans and subscribers. And to those that are tuning into my show for the very, very first time, I just want to say again, thank you also for giving my show a shot. I also want to say thank you for devoting some of your time to watching the content. Hopefully you all enjoy it, but even more so, I hope to gain your subscription if I've earned and deserved it. And with that having been said, to everybody, I just want to say I hope y'all are having a great day. God bless, and let's dive into the show here. So, here's the thing, folks. Again, not going to beat around the bush here because everybody already knows about the news that I'm talking about here. The Detroit Lions were able to get offensive coordinator Ben Johnson back for yet another season. Now, that news in and of itself is pretty damn big because this is now the second offseason where the Lions and the faithful fans of said team have had to go through this kind of emotional gauntlet, this mental gauntlet of wondering, is he coming back? Is he going to be coming back? Is he deciding to stay? Is he deciding to go? It's been one of those types of things where we've kind of had to sit back, wonder, and think to ourselves, okay, what's going on here? Are we potentially going to keep our offensive coordinator for one more year, or are we going to have to look for somebody new? Because offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, it's not just whether or not he stays or goes. For a lot of Lions fans, not myself included, but for a lot of Lions fans, they are afraid, and that's probably the best word I could use, or they are concerned would be another word I would use, that if Ben Johnson leaves, it's going to have a massive detrimental effect to the team's chances to run it back, get back to the conference championship game at a minimum, or just in general, it'll have a detrimental effect to the Lions' offense's ability to operate and function. However, though, for at least another season, we're not going to have to worry about that question. But I will say this, while the news of Ben Johnson staying as the offensive coordinator is absolutely euphoric news, it's absolutely wonderful news, the problem is that if we just left it at that very simple bit of news, it kind of makes for a rather lousy storyline because it's like, okay, yeah, great, he's coming back, it's another year we get to keep him, but the lousy part about it is, well, why is he deciding to stay? What exactly prompted him to stay this time? Because last time we found out right away what was the reason that was keeping him here. And this time, we've also found out what's the reason that kept Ben Johnson here. And part of that comes from a player who specifically had a chance to talk with Ben Johnson. But there are other things that you could kind of infer and understand if you just keep a track of what's going on with the team in general to really get a clear picture of what the real reason as to why Ben Johnson decided to stay with the Lions. So, without further ado, that's what the nature of this episode is. It's like, listen, yeah, we already know Ben Johnson is staying, but what's the real reason? Like, what is the actual reason that Ben Johnson decided to stay here? Because you could come up with a lot of logical arguments, you could come up with a lot of logical reasons, but what's the real reason? So that's what we're going to talk about here. So, first and foremost, let's take a look at this one. When we think about it, this is the first real reason that I can think of as to why Ben Johnson stayed. And this comes directly from Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think about a day after we found out the news that Ben Johnson was going to be staying, he was quoted in a video or in a quote that he knew the reason as to why Ben Johnson was deciding to stay. And so what Amon-Ra St. Brown said was that Ben Johnson had told him that for him, and this is Ben Johnson, that they had unfinished business as far as the Detroit Lions and as far as what they were trying to do. Now, what in the thunder does unfinished business mean? Well, let's just kind of keep this very short, simple, sweet, and to the point here. Ben Johnson, the Detroit Lions, the whole team was literally one game short of the Super Bowl. Now, you have to think about this. For Ben Johnson, that's going to gnaw at you because it's like, listen, you were one game short of the Super Bowl. So it's like, listen, you were almost there. You were literally that close to being able to get the Lions to their first Super Bowl. So that in of itself is going to gnaw at you. But you also have to think about the nature of how that conference championship game went down. Take a look at how the game went. The very first half of the game, the offense was clicking. It was doing exactly what it needed to. It literally had no problem with being able to score and execute. Because again, if I recall correctly, the first 5 possessions of the game, the Lions offense scored on 4 of those 5 possessions. But after the halftime period, the Lions offense could only muster 1 scoring drive from that point on. And that was at the very end of the game to draw it within 3. That's going to cause a lot of problem. That's going to cause a lot of mental, how do I put this, some little mental anguish for Ben Johnson. Because it's like, listen, if you could have just gotten that offense to do a little bit better, a little bit more in the second period against that game against the 49ers, you could have gotten to the Super Bowl. Now, obviously, I'm trying to minimize everything else, such as the field goals that Dan Campbell didn't take, such as the defense having problems with the offense of the 49ers. I'm just simply trying to keep this towards Ben Johnson here. Now, that's what Amon-Ra said about Ben Johnson when he said unfinished business. He also said that Ben Johnson told him that the entire night prior to making his decision, Ben Johnson couldn't sleep. Again, it's gnawing at him. He's constantly trying to think of, 1, probably what's best for him and his family, but also number 2, what's best for the current situation that he's in. Because you have to understand something here. It is a completely different nature going from an offensive coordinator position to a head coaching job. You're now going from being one of the main dudes to being the main dude. You're making all the decisions, you're making game plan decisions, you're figuring out who the personnel are, you're making team decisions about what the focus and what the culture of your team's going to be. That's a massive difference in not only breadth of responsibility, but also the total scope of responsibility. So for me, it's like, okay, part of it I think is because, again, and I've said this in the past, but it's not to say anything negative about Ben Johnson. I just personally think Ben Johnson is not ready yet to take over for the head coaching position of a team. It's a massive difference of responsibility versus just being an offensive coordinator. Ben Johnson has already proven with the Lions he can handle an offensive coordinator job very, very well. But it's like, listen, I still think that for Ben Johnson personally, other than the unfinished business part of getting that close to the Super Bowl, not getting there, he's also probably personally like, listen, I'm probably not quite yet ready for being a head coach because that's a massive difference in responsibility. So that's part and parcel what I think that whole thing is going on there. But it's like, listen, the unfinished business part, you have to think about it also for Ben Johnson personally with what is going on with this team. Not just personally inside of his own, personal self, but with the team and the players that he's connected with. Because you have to think about it here. How magical would it be to get those guys that you have spent the last 2 years as the offense coordinator and at the same time have, built all these relationships with prior to being the offensive coordinator? You think about it. You now have a connection. You have a relationship with these guys. You want to do these guys well. You want to do them right. You want to get them to that Super Bowl. So for me, it's like, listen, the connection that he has with these playmakers that he has, I think is also fueling that unfinished business part. Because he's like, listen, I want to get them to the Super Bowl for them because they've earned it. They've deserved it. Which then leads me into my second point, the offensive playmakers themselves. I mean, let's just think about this here, folks. You are going to be hard pressed to find another offense that has the type of players that the Lions have, both in terms of talent, but also in terms of personalities here. Again, people are unique. And if you think about it, go to the NFL itself. Trying to find players that fit exactly what the Lions do is very, very difficult. Dan Campbell has said it. Listen, we want guys that are perfect fits for our culture. We want guys that understand what it's like to be a Detroit Lion. Well, what is it like to be a Detroit Lion from Ben Johnson and the rest of everybody else that's in that organization standpoint? You have to be hardworking. You have to be selfless. You have to be dedicated. You have all these different traits and qualities that are very, very hard to find in people, because it's like, listen, some people, they don't want to work hard, or some people, it's all about themselves, or some people, maybe they have the first two down, but they can't stay dedicated. They're only able to do their job well, or want to stick with the job for a little bit at a time, and then they need to take a break, or they're not necessarily fully invested. For these Lions players, that's not the case. These players are always at work, they're always doing their job, and they're dedicated to the cause of winning, and winning for the Lions and for themselves. That is a very, very hard set of qualities to find in players, especially with the talent that the Lions have. Because it's like, listen, think about all the talented players that fit into this category, or these categories, I should say, for the Lions on offense. Just on offense. Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, Taylor Decker, Frank Ragnow, Penei Sewell, all these guys literally fit this nature. And I know there's more to the offense than just that. I'm just talking about the guys that really, really stand out, at least in my opinion. So other guys like Jameson Williams, Graham Glasgow, Jonah Jackson, they also fit into that category. The point of the matter is, all those guys I've mentioned, it's very, very difficult to try and find guys that are both that talented, but also fit the categories that you're looking for. So for me, it's like, okay, that right there, those offensive playmakers, the types of personalities and the types of categories that they fit into for not only Ben Johnson, but for this offense, I think is another reason why he decided to stay. Because you have to think about it. What was the reason that we found out last year why Ben Johnson decided to stay? It was because primarily of Jared Goff. Because last year, we found out that Jared Goff was one of the biggest reasons that Ben Johnson decided to stay. Because it was like, listen, you try and find another quarterback like Jared Goff in the NFL, you're going to be looking for quite a while. That's part of the reason why I've said what I've said about Jared Goff for the last couple of years. It's like, listen, Jared Goff is a very damn good quarterback. Again, take a look at the statistics from last year and the year before. This year and last year. I'm getting ahead of myself. The last 2 years that Jared Goff has been with the Lions, he has been absolutely stupendous. He's been a top 5 quarterback in terms of his production, in terms of what he means to the Lions as a team, and also in terms of what he is in terms of representation for the NFL. He made the top 100 of players last year. I guarantee you he's going to make it this year. He could have gone to the Pro Bowl this year. He decided not to. He turned down the invitation. That's my whole point. These are guys that are very, very hard to replace. They're very hard to find. And I guarantee you, Ben Johnson does not want to have to go through the process of trying to find guys that are going to fit what he's looking for as a first-time head coach. It's going to be very, very difficult. Plus, again, the connection that he has with these guys is very unique. You can't just, up and find it somewhere else. So that's reason number 2, in my opinion. Now, reason number 3. This right here is probably one of the biggest reasons that I can think of that's not necessarily talked about, but it's highly inferred from people. Loyalty. Again, you have to understand the world and the nature of the world that we live in. Loyalty is one of those words that gets thrown around a lot, but it don't really have a whole lot of damn value to people anymore. But think about it with Ben Johnson. He has proven his loyalty to the Detroit Lions in multiple ways. First and foremost, he's proven his loyalty to Dan Campbell, because it's like, listen, Ben Johnson last year could have had a job. He could have had a job with the Panthers. He could have had a job with multiple different teams as a head coach. This year, he could have had a job with either the Seahawks or the Commanders or any of the other teams if he decided to go there. But yet, Ben Johnson has specifically stated, I am loyal to Dan Campbell. I'm loyal to his plan that he has here in Detroit. I'm loyal to his culture. I'm loyal to what he is doing. He wants to stay here because he's loyal to how Dan Campbell runs things. And it's like, listen, you can't argue with the damn results. You go from 3-13-1 to 9-8 to 12-5, and you've gone in 3 years from being a bottom feeder team to a team that is now considered a Super Bowl contender. Kind of hard to not be loyal to that point of view. Kind of hard not to argue with the results. So it's like, listen, Ben Johnson is loyal to what Dan Campbell is doing here because, one, he has seen the results, but also, two, we know that Dan Campbell is loyal to not only his players, but everybody else on the staff. It's a reciprocative relationship. So there's that part of the loyalty factor. Number 2, and I kind of talked about it throughout the course of this episode, Ben Johnson is loyal to the players. Again, the kind of connection, the kind of repertoire, the kind of rapport that freaking Ben Johnson has with these players, he's not going to find anywhere else. When you've gone through the crap that the Lions had to go through the first 1.5 years that he was with the team in 2021 and then the first half of 2022, you find out, one, and not only really quick about who you are as a person, but you also find out really quickly who other people are as people. And when you can go through that entire process, you come out on the other side of it, and it's like, listen, you're willing to go to war with these guys. You're willing to go to battle with these guys because they have shown up time and time again. They've done their job. They never complained. They just did what you asked them to do, and you still saw them come in every single day and do their job. That right there has a huge and profound impact on people. It inspires a sense of, like I said, loyalty. You don't want to just leave those guys behind. Which is, again, my whole point with the loyalty factor, because it's like, listen, you can't just find that somewhere else. You're not just going to be able to say, oh, well, I'm going to leave here and I'm going to find it automatically somewhere else. That's not how the real world works, and it's especially not how the NFL works. And then finally, to go, again, with the whole loyalty factor, there's the loyalty to the Lions organization in general. There's loyalty to Sheila. There's loyalty to that whole organization. Because you have to think about it with the Lions. They were the team that gave him his first opportunity to be an offensive coordinator. Prior to the Lions, he'd always been a position coach of some time. And then also prior to the Lions, he was sitting on his butt at home for quite a long time trying to figure out what he was going to do, because I remember that interview. I remember reading that whole report. This whole thing with the Lions is the Lions gave him a huge lifeline, and they gave him a huge opportunity to become an offensive coordinator. You don't want to just throw that away. You don't want to just say, well, you know what, I've gotten mine, now I want to go and get more. It's like, listen, Ben Johnson wants to fulfill the responsibilities that the Lions gave to him, and it's like, listen, again, to go back to that very first point I said, when you're one game away from the Super Bowl, it's like, listen, that is going to fuel you. It's going to gnaw at you, and it's like, listen, I know we could have gotten to the Super Bowl. I know it in my bones that we could have gotten there. And I guarantee you, Ben Johnson's not the only one in that organization that knows that. And Ben Johnson's not the only one that has that fire and that competitive desire right now. It's like, listen, we were one game away from the Super Bowl. And if you actually want to think about it, if not for a few plays here or there, the Lions could have gone to the Super Bowl. That is going to be their fuel. That is going to be their drive. That is going to be the Lions' whole existence for the next couple of months going into next year. Like, listen, we were this close. We were that freaking close. Let's get back to work. Let's bring the game. Let's round it up again. We're going to war, and we're going to get back there, and we're going to make it to the Super Bowl this year. I guarantee you that's what Ben Johnson's thinking, and I guarantee you that's what everybody else in that room at the Lions organization is thinking. They want to bring everybody back so that way they can go back into not only to the conference championship game, but get to a Super Bowl. And that's exactly what I think is going on here. All these points all stem to the same singular purpose. We want to go to the Super Bowl. And that's exactly what everybody's thought process is. But anyway, that to me is the real reason, or rather the real reasons that Ben Johnson came back. Whether or not, the Lions adjusted his contract, so far we haven't heard anything about that. We haven't heard if he's gotten any more money or anything like that. I don't think that's the case either way. But the point of the matter is that for me, it's not just the news about why Ben Johnson came back. It's the big question of why he came back. And when you start taking a look at that why factor, it makes this news not only much more sweeter, but it also makes it that much more deep, have a much more deeper meaning to me. So, having explained all that, talked about all that, I just wanted to put this episode together so that way I could say I talked about it, but also so that way I could give you guys my thoughts on the whole thing. But having talked about that, having said that, I just want to say thank you all for watching another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, highly encourage y'all to do one of these three things. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If by chance you subscribed in the past, you forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and now had a chance to do so, again, want to highly encourage y'all to please subscribe because it helps me out. But also, please make sure you turn on that bell notification icon as well, so that way you never miss any more content that I push out. Again, subscription numbers are always going up, but we want to make sure we also turn on that bell notification icon so that way you guys come back and you guys can always get a chance to watch the latest content that I push out. to help in that endeavor as well, please share this content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you can with everybody and anybody that you can. Again, highly encourage you all to do that because that also helps me out. And I'm thankful for every share as well as every subscription that I can get my hands on. With that having been said, to everybody, I just want to say thank you all for devoting your time to watching the content. Thank you all for everything that you do. You guys are an absolutely amazing group of people. And I just want to say, I hope you all enjoyed the content. I hope to have gained your subscription if I had not done so before. We're so close to 5,000. Let's keep that subscription number going up. And with that, to everybody, I just want to say, hope you all had a great day. Hope you all are having a great day. God bless. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.